Good morning and welcome to all our listeners, both in Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide. All you people who have been listening and following this program every Thursday. And let me remind all our brothers and sisters out there, this program is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and Facebook soon after the end of the program. It will also be repeated on this same platform that is on radio and television, Jagriti, at 10 p.m. tonight. So those of you who are unable to stay with the whole program or would like to listen to or follow up again on it, you can listen again tonight, or you can refer it to people who you believe might benefit from the content of the program. Before we continue, I want to wish all our fathers and even those mothers who substitute some time as head of single uh, family homes. Happy Father's Day this weekend. I also want to wish my nephew Rajesh Dwarika a happy Father's Day as well, and a happy birthday as well today. This morning, this week I have been counseling quite a few people on alcoholism and drug addiction. I do provide that service as well. And today I'm also trying an experiment because this is an interactive program. So I have put my cell phone number, which is, of course, WhatsApp ready, but I'm suggesting you don't call the number because I've turned off the volume, but you can text any questions you have. If you wish to remain anonymous, you can text 768-5925. And you can also call directly to the station, the television station at 663-2335 or 663-1027. This is an interactive program, and it helps when you call in and ask questions because the response to your questions may not only benefit you, but will benefit so many other people who have similar concerns and who probably do not have the facility to call the station. And you also can make very brief comments as well if you have had the experience either in recovery or with drug addiction or someone who you're familiar with. You are allowed to make comments as well. So I would like to encourage our listeners out there to call in and be interactive. I have questions that comes to me, but before I go to those, I just want to speak on one or two important topics here. There's a belief that a person who is drinking alcohol for a long period, and well, of course, because of drinking, there's a whole lot of attendant problems, domestic violence, financial problems, irresponsibility, illness, injury, accident, crime, all of those things attend on drinking and drug use. We're all familiar with those things. And there's a popular belief that once a person stopped the drinking, all of these things will just fix. They will be resolved for themselves. The family issues. So in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I just want to refer our listeners to it's available online, and for people in recovery, it is a very rich source of material that you can access to help yourself to understand the nature of alcoholism and drug addiction. There's a particular chapter on the family afterwards, and there's a chapter to wives. There's also one to employers that are very instructive in terms of what you can expect or not expect from a person, sorry, who's in recovery. So that would be good reading. Now, even people who have stopped, they are baffled by And their families usually baffled by why they go back and drink. They seem to be doing well in a very short time, like a gentleman I was speaking to yesterday morning, sorry, who within 1 week of stopping, he is sleeping better now, he's eating better. And this usually happens across the board. The craving for the alcohol is reduced, not altogether disappeared, but I should take pictures of people before and after, because in just 1 week you can see the transformation in the person's facial appearance, body, their skin tone, and all of that. And more important, my first session with this particular person, he was so silent, he was not speaking. At our session yesterday, he was very interactive. He had so much insight. Now he could tell you, look, his brain is like, he can think more straight and clearly. So in spite of all of these things, one would think that could encourage one to, and it does encourage a person to stay sober. But why it is a lot of people, in the lead up to this program, we heard that almost 85% of people who have become addicted to drug addiction and alcohol and drugs, they tend to relapse. Why? I mean, when they're seeing all of these benefits, it is baffling to a lot of people. Well, how come you don't want to remain like that? Family members are baffled. So I think it needs further discussion, that whole the situation where people tend to, in spite of all of these benefits, eating better, sleeping better, now relationships are improving, they're saving a few cents, their muscles are tingling now, they're feeling stronger, can think more clearly. In spite of all of this, how come they go and relapse? Well, this is why it is important, as was said in the lead up to the program, that you need to continue to receive support, because the human mind is like this. We have a tendency to forget. And thank God we do forget, because if we remember all the trauma we have experienced in our life and we didn't forget them, we would become mentally ill. So that, but that in itself can become a liability, because a lot of people present to a treatment facility or come to see me or some other professional, usually because they are in crisis. Some are either it be a health crisis, or the police might have breathalyzed them and they were taken to court, and the court would have mandated that they attend Alcoholics Anonymous or seek treatment for their drug addiction. And that is how a lot of people present initially at a treatment facility or seek help, not so much because they want to, but because they are pressured, they are forced, they come under duress. Sometimes the employer threatens after so many absenteeism on job, or an accident on the job, or some misconduct where they became obscene or abusive, and they are threatened to be fired unless they go and do something about their drinking. Because usually these are very valued workers. The company would have spent a lot of money in training them and allowing them to have an experience in working the plant and equipment. And from my own personal experience, I know alcoholics and drug addicts are very skilled and talented people. And they when they are working, they do their best so that they could cover for themselves. And usually they earn a lot of admiration and respect for the work. And many an employer or relative would say, boy, he's one of the best workers, or best son, or all of that, or cousin, except when he drinks. And it's a real sorry tale to have to lose a person like that to alcoholism and drug addiction. And this is why employers and the police and the treatment facilities, they have an additional advantage in getting the person because to go for treatment. Because when the police say, look, you either go do something about your drinking or drug use or you're going to face a prison term, that's a sufficient incentive for anyone to want to make that choice to go for treatment. Or if the employer say, look, you either go and get help for your drinking or drug use, otherwise you are going to lose your job. In which case it translates to him, he will lose his money and his funding. So he will not be able to use his drugs. And sometimes too, when the wife threatens or leaves the home in order to get her back, he may decide, well, all right, you know what, I'll go for treat, I'll go to AA, or I'll do something to impress her to come back. And so that a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts, their initial um, attempt is based largely on duress or some pressure from some situation that they have found themselves in. However, that once they stop drinking, they get back the job, the wife comes back, the magistrate reprimands and discharges them. In a little while, it is said in social work counseling circles, the research has suggested that any crisis a human being experiences, there's a tendency for a crisis to redefine itself. And the average time is about 6 weeks. So that what was a crisis 6 weeks ago tend not to be so sharp and pronounced and stressful with the passage of time. And hence the saying, time is the healer for almost any problem, even death and separation. With time, people eventually adjust, generally. So that what happens is the crisis which brought the person to treatment and which propels them initially, to stay sober, becomes the motivation for staying sober. It wears off in a little while, and I have used the analogy sometimes, sometimes you're walking barefooted, carelessly, sometimes you're walking very fast and you stump your toe and you feel pain, and immediately you'll start walking very slowly and carefully. But after a few days, you forget that pain and you start walking the same way again. So too with drug addiction. If a person is staying sober because of the memory of the crisis, the pain of that crisis, the threat or fear of what the consequences they would have faced, that will only carry them for so long. Because I had to explain to a lot of people in the past that most people who drink alcohol do not really taste good. If you watch somebody having their first drink, especially if it is punch and rum or one of those things, and watch their face and see, it's like if they just had a taste of lime. They'll twist up all over and all that. It does not taste good. But they're not drinking it for the flavor. They're drinking it for the utilitarian value, the effect it would have on their mood or on their state of mind. So that the person who would have started taking alcohol recreationally as a young man with his friends, because of peer pressure and wanting to belong and all of that, gradually realizes, but when I take this, it transforms me. It changes my mood from becoming a very recluse, introverted person. I could become very outgoing. The same guy who is afraid to ask the girl to dance, he is now the butterfly in the party. You understand? And he remembers that. So, point is, with the passage of time, the alcoholic or the drug addict starts using the drugs to help them to cope, to help them to deal with emotional extremes. Like if they're angry, they want to drink or use drugs. If they're sad, they want to use. If they disappointed, they will use for that. If they win something or if they succeeded, they won the match, they're going to celebrate with that. So they learn to deal with all extreme or to achieve extremes of emotions. You know, you're feeling happy, but with a few drinks, you'll feel more happy. They have they become psychologically dependent on the drug. So that for people who have become psychologically dependent, and then let me add to that, with time, a person who is drinking alcohol and using drugs, they develop what is called tolerance, where the body, you have to use more and you have to use more often to get that psychological effect. So the body starts to become physically resistant to the drug. This is why people who are heavy alcoholics, if they went into hospital, you know, doctors have a hell of a time sedating them with normal drugs. They have to give them heavy doses because they have become hard-headed. So too, the person who has started using drugs to help them to cope with various states of mind, happiness, sadness, depression, anxiety, and so on, when they stop using the drug, they still have to deal with these mental states. And this is why some alcoholics and drug addicts will need additional help. I see we have a question coming in from a caller. It says, how do I deal with guilt with those who I hurt while on recovery? Very good question. And again, I had referred to a chapter in the book, big book called The Family Afterwards, where a lot of families, you know, when, let's suppose the husband is the alcoholic or the father in the house, and I can tell you, as I say that, it is worse off when the mother is an alcoholic. The children, the family suffers even more because when the father is the alcoholic, the mother is still holding things together. But the father can become very abusive, physically abusive to the mother, to the children, even to the pets. He can also, because of his drinking, the family is deprived of financial support, shoes for school, books on time, the fees can't be paid, the shop, the grocery, they have to cut back on, you know, can't go to the wedding because we can't get the clothes, the outfit, you know. And there's so much, not only physical abuse, but there's emotional abuse. So that when the person stops, they just put down the glass, you know, family sometimes expect, well, look, he stopped drinking, you know, now he will take us on the holiday. Now he'll fix the window and paint the house and all of that, you know, and now at least he would make amends and behave differently. And these are all, I mean, reasonable expectations that they have of the alcoholic. And so, yes, they end up a lot of times sending him on guilt trips, you know, because they will remind him, you remember when you was drinking, you did this and how you did that, and you said so to me, and you know, and these things can put a lot of pressure on the alcoholic that could even result in him going back to drink. But it is important that the family understands that, because yes, I also understand how the family, after all these years of abuse, you know, he stopped drinking, but sometimes he's still behaving just like he was drinking. He's still arrogant, he's still tyrannical. So that one of the first things, and in the lead up to this program, you would have heard the person, the presenter suggested that one of the first things the alcoholic has to do is forgive himself. Because remember, you are not a bad person. You are a sick person. The family needs to understand that as well. So he has to forgive himself, and he also has to forgive those around him. Now, the thing is whether the people around him are ready to forgive him. And this is why an alcoholic in recovery needs to have a sponsor, someone to guide them. Because if you are going to make amends to the people around you, the relatives or the friends or the neighbors, and you don't time it right, it might end up in another blowout, because they are still angry over what you've done. You have not in any way demonstrated that you will stay sober, because remember, there's a lot of times in the past you might have stayed sober for a few weeks or a few months, and then you relapse back to the same behavior. So they don't trust you. They don't know if you're really going to stay sober, and as a result, they're not ready to forgive you. And unwittingly, sometimes, the family can place so much demands on the alcoholic that he can feel overwhelmed. And this is why it is suggested that alcoholism and drug addiction is not only an individual illness, because the family as well becomes ill as the alcoholic or the drug addict starts to degenerate into alcoholism and drug addiction. The family has to change their whole relationship towards him, and the neighborhood, the community change their relationship towards the family as well, because drug addiction is highly stigmatized. So that this is why alcoholism, unlike other illnesses like diarrhea and whatever, you have high blood pressure and diabetes and even cancer, is not an individual illness, it's a family illness. And not only the family, sometimes even the community and the neighborhood is affected by a person's drinking and drug use, because alcoholics and drug abusers do not keep their bad habit to themselves. Some of them stone the neighbor house, sometimes curse, sometimes they become very unruly and indisciplined. So that recovery is a multifaceted thing. It has to be in an assisted process. While there's said that a person, you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. Meaning, very often the alcoholic and drug addict, a lot of them would have liked to be able to stop. Like we've seen relatives or a parent who will boast and tell you, look, I didn't go to AA, I didn't go to treatment, but look, I have stopped for so many years. And they expect you should be able to do the same thing. But you see, like we say, Gopal lock is not Sipol lock. No two people are similar. So that while one person may be able to do it, they might just remain abstinent. And this is what at the beginning of this conversation. Putting down the glass is not recovery. A person might put down the glass and stop drinking, remain abstinent, but still be unreasonable, still be selfish, still be self-centered, still be very arrogant and tyrannical. And I have seen instances like that where family members complain, better he was drinking still. But then the family as well need to understand their role in the person's recovery. And this is why Alcoholics Anonymous suggested that there's a parallel fellowship called Al-Anon for the family members of alcoholics, so that they will understand how they were affected by this person drinking. I see we have another comment coming in. How do I deal with loneliness in my sobriety? I had to cut off a lot of friends I used to hang around with, because mentally it was affecting me and I didn't want to mess up my sobriety, and now I feel lonely. Very, very important question in recovery, because one of the prominent advice that is I give and other people give to people who are attempting to stay sober, one of the first advice you will get is that you have to stay away from slippery people and slippery places. Meaning you have to stop hanging around with your friends in the rum shop or the block, and you have to stay away from the substances themselves. Now, we know that human beings are what you call gregarious. We live in groups. We are born into groups. A family is a group. And then we belong to other groups like the workplace, like school, like the temple, the organization that we belong to. we have a tendency to gravitate to belong to groups. And it does matter to us what other people think of us. You know, this is this is one of the examples of how peer pressure can affect a person positively or negatively. Now, so that in the initial stages of recovery, I suggest to a person who is attempting to stop drinking or who is in the first few days of their recovery or first few weeks that they have to stay away from the drinking friends or drinking drug using friends. And yes, it is a time when loneliness can become an issue. And this is again one of the major reasons immediately I suggest to a person in Alcoholics and an alcoholic to join a support group like Alcoholics Anonymous, because immediately you start making friends with people who are in recovery. And so that you don't have to deal, that's one way to deal with the loneliness. Because a lot of people, they stop drinking. And let me elaborate on that. Because by the time a person reached a chronic alcoholism or drug use, they're not hanging out with social drinkers anymore. They're not hanging out with people who just taking a pull on a marijuana. They are hanging out with people who are chronic users like themselves. Because when an alcoholic sits with a group of people and they are social drinkers, they will just sip a drink and talk and talk, and their interest is not so much the drink. The drink is just a tool, a social lubricant. But the alcoholic is not there to talk. He will be drinking drink after drink because he wants, well, after he takes that first drink, his motive is to get drunk. And so I have seen alcoholics literally egging on the other people in the group and by saying, look, you all come here to talk or you come here to drink. You understand? So that the point I'm making that the alcoholic usually becomes friend with other people who all his friends are alcoholics. And you listening out there, if you are a heavy drinker or you're a person in recovery, you will remember if a fella ain't drinking, we're not carrying him on the line, because he gonna spoil the line. When we having a good time, he want to go home. You understand? As a person who is not drinking in a group of heavy drinkers sticks out like a sore thumb. So it ends up invariably with the alcoholic at the time of chronic drinking and when he's deciding to stop. All his friends are alcoholics. And there's a saying in recovery circles that misery likes company. So that, as a person in recovery myself, I have had that experience. You're still trying to stay with your old friends. When I stopped drinking, I was working in social welfare at the time, and I had a lot of friends who would drink. And yes, after work, we go sit down for a lime, and now I stopped drinking. And how many Malta I could drink? They buy every time they buy a rounds of beer, they buy a Malta for me. And after 2 or 3 Malta, I am sick with Malta. I realize this thing don't work. And then after a little while, I can't follow the conversation because when alcoholics are drinking after a few beers, nobody is listening, everybody's talking. I only realized that after I stopped drinking. So I realized that's not the place for me. Besides, sometimes these people can become insultive. They will tell you things like, boy, what are you trying to do? When rain falling, you didn't put out your barrel. Now dew falling, you're trying to save money, you're trying to be stingy, or that you are afraid of your wife and all of that. These are all kinds of things they'll tell you to provoke you into or challenge you into taking a drink. And it is a dangerous practice for anyone in recovery. Because I've seen so many people after they stop drinking want to prove to their friends that, look, you all can't make me drink. And they'll go just to show off, as it were, that they have control now and they have willpower and they could sit down there and drink a soft drink or a Malta. And yes, they'll do that once or twice. But one, they remember most of this is what the subject has been this morning. A lot of people are not drinking because they like the taste of it. They were drinking to help them to cope. And that same guy, one day when he gets into an argument at home or has a serious problem on the job or some serious psychological trauma, and he goes with his friend that day, he will not even realize when his hands reach out and take that drink. So that this is one of the reasons why loneliness becomes an issue, because you have to stay away from people, places, and situations of the past. Because a person who is drinking, not only his friends are alcoholics and heavy drinkers, but he would have only been going to places where activities that had drink in it, and I could recall my own experience. After a while, I'm not going to PTA meetings or Ramayana or Bhagavad. If they have no drink, I had no motivation to go there. Riverline, yes, I will go. Fat match, I'll be there. Birthday party, you'll see me. You understand? Once there was alcohol, so that it happens with most alcoholics. All the activities that they associate, the people, places, situation, was associated with drinking. Because when he's not drinking, he's thinking about drinking. The obsession is there. So that when a person stops drinking, to a lot of people, it's like they stop living. They have to turn a new page. They have to start living all over again. How to live without all of these river limes and birthday parties and all of that, to change around all of that overnight. And this is why it is critical that they find a support group and they find new friends, so that when they get the urges to take a drink, someone will be there to tell them, hey, listen, you can't do that. A drink will not fix it. I see we have another question coming in. Just for today, I will have faith in someone who believe in me and wants me to recover. Oh, that's a beautiful quote coming in from one of our listeners. Within it is a very, very important formula. In fact, it is the formula for recovery, just for today. No matter how rich a person might be, how influential they are, whatever, or even how poor they are, or even if you're a vagrant, all of us only have this one day, that is today. And that was one of the main, I would say, foundation pillars that really sustained my recovery, as well as I've known so many people. The formula of avoiding that first drink one day at a time. When we think about having to stop drinking for the rest of our lives, it sounds like a very, very overwhelming task. You know what I mean? For the alcoholic who has been drinking for so long and using drink for everything, to wake up in the morning, to go to sleep in the night, to make a speech, sing a song, talk to people, everything had to be punctuated with alcohol. It is very difficult to conceptualize a life without alcohol, and to be able to do that, you mean not take a drink for the rest of my life? And then when we look back in retrospect, how many times I would have promised myself and other people I stopped, and I only lasted, sometimes I didn't even last the whole day. Immediately it comes up in my mind that I will never be able to stop. In fact, I didn't want to stop when I stopped. But that's another story. Fact is, but when you say, look, just for today, it immediately seems so much more doable. That look, I could do this. I could, and you don't even have to stop for the whole day. You just tell yourself, you see, right now, I'm not going to take that drink. Right? Or I'm not going to take that cigarette. Or I'm not going to take that pull on that marijuana or that drug. Or I am not going to go to that place. Or I'm not going. And it not only works with alcoholism, it can work with any kind of addiction or behavior that you find undesirable, that you would like to change. All you have to do is disengage. You pray to God. This is the formula. You pray to God. You ask God's help. Right? So at the beginning of the day, Millions of alcoholics worldwide do this on a daily basis. They get up in the morning and they ask God, God, help me to stay sober just for today. Drug addicts do the same thing. People in recovery do it. I counsel all kinds of addiction, not only alcohol. I counsel people with problems with gambling, with overeating, with marijuana addiction, behavioral problems, even infidelity. You get up in the morning, you realize, look, this behavior, this substance is making my life unmanageable. It is taking me down a way I don't want to go, that is going to destroy me and destroy my family, destroy my future, my education. So you decide, okay, from just for today, I'm going to get up this morning. I'll pray to the God of my understanding, the higher power that I believe in, whatever that higher power is. God, or whatever name you call that higher power. You pray to your higher power, but you pray to God as though everything depends on God, or your higher power as though everything depends on your higher power. However, you still have to behave as though everything depends on you. So you get up, you pray in the morning, you say, God, help me to stay away from alcohol, cigarette, marijuana, whatever, gambling, chocolates, the relationship that is pathologic, stay away from that just for today. Yes, the urges will come. When the urge come, you again, God help me to get over this urge. Or you talk to someone, or you call your counselor, or you call your sponsor. Once you do those things, you will not give in to the urge. A urge only lasts about 7 seconds, And if you call someone or you become aware of it and you are seriously motivated to stop, the urge will leave you. Eventually, after it happens a few times, it will relieve you. God will take away that obsession. So that is the formula. You avoid it one day at a time. You know, a good book says, enough unto the day are the troubles thereof. So that there's no need to telescope tomorrow's worries and bring it into the day, or bring back yesterday's worries into the today. Yesterday is gone, we can't do anything about it. Tomorrow is not here yet. We only have today. And even today, we don't have this evening yet. We only have now. So right now, I'm speaking to every one of you listening to this program. Any habit, anything you would like to change in your life, you can resolve this minute right away to say, God, you don't have to say no long prayers. God is listening to this program as well, of course. And if you are listening to this program, it is God's will that you are listening to this program as well. Nothing in God's will has happened by accident. And you can say, well, look, you know what, God? I want to stop eating chocolate. Or I want to stop this sugar. Or I want to stop this cigarette, or this gambling, or this relationship that is not good. Whatever it is that is making your life unmanageable, you can resolve to do it just for today, and not even for today, just for right now. And anytime you get the urge, you renew your contract again. You says, God, help me to get over this urge. And a journey of 1,000 miles always begins with the first step. You understand? And this will be your first step. Days will grow into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. On the 11th of December, I stopped drinking. That was my first step. If God self had come in those days and said, someday I'll be doing television programs like this, I'd probably ask him if he's drunk. But we don't know the future. Today could be that day when you make that choice that could change the whole of your life, as it did for me. I stopped drinking. I went back to school. I have, with a sober head, you can make better choices. That I have been doing. And today, I have found that peace of mind. I have found the happiness that I was always elusive, that I try to find in drinking and drug use and all of that. So that I see another question, a lot of people, you know, check whether, counting their days helps. Yes, some people see it as a service record and they celebrate anniversaries and all of that. The important thing is what works for you. If it works for you, sure. Now, when you get the urge to take a drink, or to break your commitment, that is, to engage in a behavior you don't want to, when you get the urge, one of the ways, as I said, is you pray, you ask God to help you get over. Once you become, thoughts are like thieves, That's how urges come. They are your thoughts. And thoughts are like thieves. Once you catch them, or once you become aware of it, you can stop it. But if you are not aware of it, then it can become an obsession, especially if you are not motivated. And if you're having difficulty with motivation or wanting to continue or to sustain the effort, go back and look and see in your life the role that drug has played in your life. You understand? So that is where your insight, from your insight into your drug use, will come your motivation to stop. And I know when we're having a conversation like this, we're always running out of time. But of course, my number is on the screen. So anybody has any questions, you can text me at any time and I will respond to you. And I want to thank the radio and television station for giving us this opportunity, this time to share with our brothers and sisters out there. Every Thursday, I want to remind you again, the program is on from 9 o'clock, and the program will be repeated again tonight at 10. So those of you who missed any part of it, or who want to go back and listen to anything, and if you have even questions, then you can save it up, text it to me, and I'll respond on the other program next week. Any questions between now and then? If you have questions, you can text them to me, and I will respond to you on the program so that not only you will benefit, other people will benefit. I'm saying to all those people in recovery out there, if you have questions as well, any one of our listeners, you can text it to 768-5925. I have WhatsApp, so it won't cost you anything, and I will respond to you next week's program. So until then, I want to thank you for listening in, being with us. And remember, this program is going to be posted on Facebook and YouTube as we end. So Sitaram and goodbye.